Welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. In this episode, I'm joined by George Wilson. George is the sales director at Principal People, and he's been in the business for over 10 years, starting as a resourcer. In this episode, he shares what that journey looks like, staying within one business. He talks about the high performance traits that he's seen of the best recruiters, and he talks about what the future holds for specialist recruitment agencies. I think you're going to enjoy this one. George, welcome to Amplifying Recruitment.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to do for anyone that doesn't know you, just a 60-second intro?
Yeah, sure. So I'm George Wilson. I am the sales director at Principal People, Health, Safety, Environment and Quality Recruitment. I've worked for Principal People since 2014. Started off as a resourcing partner / sort of an apprentice. Technically, I was an apprentice as well at the time. And I've been at the business for 11 and a half years now.
It's unusual, isn't it, to go from, well, I think it's unusual to see resourcer to director. Not necessarily like going from resourcer to director, but do it in one business. Like usually I see people have to move to go from this position to get a promotion, to get a promotion, to get a promotion. I've seen it go full circle and come back to the original business, but it's rare to do it in one business.
I think the reason why I've been able to do it at Principal People is that I just joined at the perfect time. So Principal People is 40 years old next year. Obviously there's no one there that's been there for that long now. A gentleman by the name of Simon Bliss, who bought the business back in, I think it was around 2010, he kind of hit the reset button on it at that point. And he had never worked in recruitment himself before, but he had people that were on his board that did have experience of working in that space. And he just went out recruiting for young, hungry, ambitious people that wanted to be successful. And I came in 2014. And at that point, there were 3 or 4 other people still at the business who had joined about 6 months to a year prior to me being there. There was one other as well who'd been there a bit longer. And as I joined the business, we just started hiring a few other people that were on the same wavelength, similar sort of ages, similar sort of backgrounds. I think values as well was a big part of it. And we all had this one vision and this one goal to make the business a success. And we were led by a good manager as well at the time. And just everyone bounced off of one another. And then because of changes of the business, it's happened that I've developed into this sort of role.
But there must be something you did differently, because not all of those other people went from resourcer up to senior director today. I know some people have gone on to have other businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of the few people that came in as a resourcing partner straight away. A few of the other people had, like Tom, who's now our MD. He already had experience in recruitment. He'd worked with the manager of the business at the time, and so he was brought in with experience. And I actually ended up being his resourcer first and foremost. A couple of the other people also had experience as well, to be honest. And then obviously there was one other person who was a resourcer who also subsequently became a director of another business as well. So actually at that time, all of those people had a goal of becoming a leader at some point, and everyone was willing to kind of put the graft in at the start. I think I think everyone had their own journey in a different way, and everyone was good at certain things and everyone needed to develop in certain ways. For me personally, one of the things I first realized when I joined the business was I was a bit slower than everyone else, and I perhaps didn't pick things up as quickly as everyone else. And I made a really conscious effort to maybe start a bit earlier, finish a little bit later, because I used to look over to my colleague Max, who still works for us, and I used to kind of be like, admire the fact like he would make a phone call and pull a job and be successful. And I kind of thought to myself, I can't wait until I'm in that position. But I kind of always had a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I was never good at school, and I realised that I might have to just work a little bit harder than everyone else.
How old were you at this time?
I joined 1 week after my 21st birthday.
I think that's go as far as say it's pretty rare to as a trait to recognise. Do you know what, I'm slower than these other people. I'm not as good as these other people. I have to do more.
Well, I think, yeah, it possibly is. But I I by no means had a tough upbringing in any way, shape, or form. I pretty much had everything I ever needed or wanted, but I didn't have everything that I ever wanted, if that makes sense. So my parents didn't give me everything. If I wanted a new pair of trainers, I had to go and get a job at 14 to go and do it. And when I was at school, I was in the bottom of everything. Like, you know, bar sport, I was at the bottom. I was in the lowest class, and I knew no one was ever going to give me anything. I was never going to get in some inheritance from grandparents or inheritance from my parents anytime soon. Like, no one was going to give me anything. If I wanted to, I didn't want to be left behind, I think, by like my friends. And at school, me and one other person, the only people that didn't go to university. So I kind of had this, my view was, by the time all my friends came out of uni, I wanted to be earning the same as what they would, which at that point was probably about 30k a year. So if I could make 30k by the age of 23, 22, I can't remember what age I come out of uni, but that was my goal, was to be earning the same, so I wasn't left behind. So yeah, that's kind of what I suppose motivated me.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to some of that because I think there's some really interesting traits there. So over this period, obviously, that's 10 years, right? And you've gone through the ranks of resourcer up to where you are now. What's the best year you've had?
Like billing wise, or just success?
I'll let you answer that. How you what you define as your best year in recruitment?
I think there's two, because we work in sales, we work in recruitment, and I think whenever you build the most, like that's always like a nice part. The best year I ever had was about 325, 330-ish K. However, I have to put my hands up and say there's an element of cheating to that one, because I transferred from a contract desk into a permanent desk, and I was given the opportunity to, I was on a lower commission structure for it, but I was in a position where I could keep some of my contract runners whilst I grew this permanent desk. So it was actually a perfect situation, really, because I still had my runners coming in from a contract desk I'd built, transferred into a permanent desk, and was given a good opportunity there. So that was my best ever billing year. In terms of success, I think, like, personally for me, I think this year could be one of them, and I'll explain why in a second. But if that year isn't finished yet, but at one point I had about 5 people reporting into me, and a number of those were like trainee consultants or were in the process of becoming consultants. And I had one guy who was working in a new desk who was doing really, really well. I had a resourcing partner who still works for us now called Dom, who left and came back. And he was doing really, really well and performing well. I had a colleague called Mike who's still with us, and I remember he did well that year. And then also I had an administrator and like a apprentice as well who was developing really, really well. And I just remember feeling a lot of satisfaction from watching these people improve, develop. Quite early on in my career, I realised, like, I loved the sale. I still love it. I think it's like a drug, isn't it? Like when you do a deal now, like I'm still buzzing for it. Like if I pull a retainer now, you know, even though I barely do BD, it's like I love that feeling. But it's not sustainable, I think. And I used to always come home, and my parents used to say, "God, you work like so long hours, and you're not really getting all that much." Like, you know, I wasn't financially getting a lot at this point, and I said, "No, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it." And early doors, I was like, this isn't sustainable for me. So I set myself a goal of, by the age of 35, I didn't want to be billing anymore. I wanted to somehow get myself into a position where it was a role where it was non-billing, like in any way, any capacity, whatever that job looked like. So quite early on as well, as our business was growing, they wanted people to be less selfish, which, when you're a group of 25-year-olds and there's some of them driving Porsches and someone's just getting a new Mercedes, you're trying to keep up with the rat race. It's hard to then go and give extra splits to that resourcing partner or that trainee consultant. But for me, I was always thinking about that long-term game. And it kind of goes back to that point that we made at the very start, which was I didn't want to be left behind. And I was willing not to try and be like the top biller in order to progress myself for the long-term game, which I'd like to think has kind of paid off for me at this point.
But again, something really rare, isn't it? Where you're willing to give that up, I think.
I think it is. I think that, like, I don't want to take it. I don't want to sit here and make it like other people maybe didn't feel that way, because I think probably people did. I know that Tom definitely did, because Tom could have quite easily, all those years ago, back in 2014, I worked for him, and I didn't bill anything in my first 7 months. And I remember
7 months.
7 months. And I remember I had a couple like close calls, and I thought it was me, right? And there was other people. I started with 2 other people, and one of them was like, she was smashing it. And I remember either I was told or I overheard a conversation, and Tom was told, you need to give him more business. Because Tom was filling his business and he was just giving me the rubbish business. Tom had never had a resourcing partner before. So he was told, you've got to give him more business. It's kind of like sink or swim. And I swam at that point. And we ended up doing really, really well. And I still think those 7 months of not billing is probably the best thing that ever could have happened, because it builds your resilience up and it makes you feel so grateful when you do start filling jobs. So at that point, Tom started giving me more. I think Tom then bought into me that I could actually do it. And then Tom probably did the most selfless thing anyone could have done in that situation, which was there was an opportunity for us to start a contract desk with myself and one other. And Tom put my name forward as, I think George would be good at contract. So at that point, he basically cut all ties as me being his resourcing partner. And I think anyone now, imagine you've got a winning formula, and then just going, I think that resourcing part would be better. Like, that's quite a selfless thing. So I think that even early doors, there were other people as well that were willing to give a little bit more away,
How did you find that transition from like top biller into, and then you talk about having that team of 5 and everyone being really successful. And obviously I know some of those guys and they're very, very good at what they do. How did you find that move?
Well, when I got top biller, like I said, it was a slight anomaly because of that contract and situation. So to be honest, that was all at the same time. That's one of the reasons why I was billing more, because I had contract runners, I had a new perm desk that I was pulling myself, and then I had 2 trainee consultants as well, which is Mike, who's still with us, and a guy called Josh. And they were performing as well. And obviously we had a program at the time that it was like, how do we reward our consultants or our team leaders like myself to want to take on more managers? So you were getting splits of their deals as well. So it was it kind of came together. That's how I got to that point. But we were also, I've never, it's nice to be top. And I always remember, it's funny, when I got top biller, or when I got like my first big quarter, like when I got big biller for the quarter or something, I always remember I got a gift, and it was a Louis Vuitton tie with the monogram on it. And it was is like one of the best gifts I've ever got, because I would never have bought that, because it's just the most outlandish, arrogant thing to have. But I loved it because it was like, oh, I earned this. And I think that at that point I was like, this is nice, and I enjoyed that, but I was willing to put that aside and let other people, I think, wanted it more, like wanted to be the big biller more. And I was actually quite happy to not be it, because I didn't really rate myself as being the best. I know I'm good at it, like there's no doubt about it. I know I'm really good at recruitment, but I think that there were people that were a bit more ruthless than I was, is probably the best way to put it, in order to get there. And probably my goal was more so still looking at this. At this point, I was still like, I want to get to 35 and not be billing anymore. Like, it was that leadership type role. And I think we all do it when we join recruitment, right? You ask anyone, what do you want to earn? They go 100K, right? So everyone says it. And for me, I think I was okay with 100K. I didn't really want to be a £1 million earner in recruitment. That wasn't my goal and desire. And I wasn't, at that point, work was my number one priority, but I knew that one day I wanted to have a family, and I wanted to have a wife, and I wanted to do all these other things. I knew that in order to get there, it has to be your life. And we had a manager and a leader that was it's their absolute life. He's one of the best recruiters I've ever worked with, but I knew that wasn't the life I wanted longer term.
Okay. I just want to go back to some of the stuff you said earlier about, you said we had a group and we were young, we were hungry, we were ambitious, all of that stuff. Do you think it's as easy to find those people now as it was 10 years ago?
I don't think it's not hard. I don't think those people don't exist anymore. I think that we can't afford them anymore is the simple answer. When I joined Principal People, I got a pay rise, and I got 14k. Before that, I worked at an estate agent's on 12k a year, and even then I was happy. I was like, £1,000 a month, like great. And we had to work really, and I remember I got a pay rise that's what kept me at Principal People. I remember really early days, I got a pay rise pretty much like every year, and I never had to ask for a pay rise. For probably the first 5 or 6 years, I never asked for a pay rise at Principal People. Every time I was billing, they rewarded me for it and they gave it to me. But they were able to. I think where I'm sat now, I can see that they were able, every time you hit quarter or hit 6 month mark, and they're like, right, we need to retain this person. They could afford it when I was on 14k when I first started. I think if they're over 21 now, so the age I was when I joined Principal People, I think with the hours that we work, I think it's something like 26,700 is the salary you have to pay someone now. That's experience. Like I was billing 200k a year on less than 25k a year. So it was I think that's the big problem now and the challenge. It's not necessarily that those people don't exist. The other thing as well is like, I don't know how much it is to do with it, but I think it's that instant gratification thing. Don't know if it's because they're all on TikTok or Instagram and all these sorts of things nowadays, but they all want things, or I say all, sorry, generalizing there. So many people want things immediately nowadays. They want to get to the top straight away. They want the success immediately. And I have to refer back to that 7 months of no billing for me sometimes. But without realizing, I'm 11 and a half years in. I'm old news now, and I'm not relatable anymore. I think that's the problem that we mainly have now, is that my story isn't relatable for a 19, 20-year-old that now joins Principal People. So we have to use other stories that other people have got within the business and experiences that they've got.
It's really interesting, isn't that instant gratification thing? Because I see that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's really easy to go, oh, that's Gen Z, and sort of berate this generation. But I think it's more of a societal thing rather than a specific.
I'd agree with that.
Generation. Okay, so what do you look for then when you're hiring? So like what are the high performance traits that you're looking for?
I think when we're looking at traits, I think maturity is a big one for us. And when I say maturity, I've actually had this conversation a couple of times this week with some of our team. When I say maturity, I don't mean act your age, not your shoe size. I mean someone that wants feedback and kind of takes it in the right way and not in the wrong way. So often now people feel like it's offensive or it's derogatory, and that's not the case. And I think as well that growth mindset, I think as well, is a massive one for us. And I'll be really honest, we've made mistakes of that, and I'm learning that at the moment. I've done a couple of courses, read a couple of books this year, and I've kind of learned that is what we want. And speaking with Tom, we did a presentation yesterday to the team about our plans for the next 4 or 5 years, and these are the top topics, is like that growth mindset of wanting to be better and wanting to do well. Also, I think personality, and these are all buzzwords, right? Like, you've got to have a good personality. But one of the best newcomers that we've had within our business is someone that we inherited from a sister company of ours, and her name's Sophie. And she was actually working as an administrator in this other business. And one of my colleagues, Reese, when they 2P'd over to us, he identified, like, he felt like she could be something in terms of recruitment. I sat down with her, did a personality profile with her as well, and she's got the same personality profile as me, Tom, and Max, so the old school. She's only 18, maybe 19 now, and she is sporty background. She comes and asks for like feedback. She wants to know how she can be better, and interestingly as well, she always wants to develop. Like she's still got that element of like, feels like I deserve to be promoted, and she does in times, and she has done since she's been working with us. But also, she doesn't want to rush up the ladder. She doesn't want to run up there. It's quite easy sometimes. People are like, oh yeah, I'll take it. She wants to learn the trade first. She wants to know, how do I become a great resourcer first, then move on to like the next steps of what that is. And for me personally, even though it's not something that you can look at when you interview someone straight away, but I think in order to be a good consultant and to be a good biller and to really know the job, I think you've got to learn your trade first, and the trade is filling business. You've got to identify how do you resource a job and how do you find out what candidate's good, and booking interviews and having those candidates not turn up, learning those harsh lessons. Because I think there's people out there that can be really good salespeople, but they can't be necessarily good recruiters. And for our business model, it's recruitment consultant, then maybe manager, team leader. How can you manage a resourcing partner if you don't know how to do it yourself?
If your revenue isn't where it should be, it's time to change how your team sells. We've just released the next dates for our flagship business development training, Turn Farmers into Hunters. This is a live in-person training in London where you'll walk away with proven frameworks, ready to use client engagement funnels and conversion skills that you can apply immediately. All the info and sign-up details are in the link in the comments. So with that then, so Reece has obviously spent 6 months with Sophie and seen certain things in her where he's identified she could be great. How do you, when you don't have the luxury of 6 months sort of sat with them and observing, how do you test for this interview? How do you know if someone's got that emotional maturity and a growth mindset?
I think we've learnt the hard way on some occasions over the last couple of years, but I think, being honest, I haven't tested it yet. So we'll find out. But I think the lessons I've learned is asking questions around like how do you best like to receive feedback, and asking really good technical questions around things like when was the last time that you were given feedback and how did you take it? What can you give me an example where someone gave you feedback and you didn't like it? Or, you know, asking those sorts of questions as well. And then also I had a telephone conversation with a lady the other week who's an apprentice. 6 months she's been doing it, and I asked her, "You've only been there for 6 months. Like, why are you looking?" Because great, like we're looking for apprentices, so it was great to find her and local. But I was confused, like, why would you be looking? And immediately she said, "I'm not feeling challenged here." Now I haven't had a chance to investigate that yet. Like, you know, is that genuine? But she's 18 and she's saying she's not being challenged in her current environment. And for me, I can challenge. If she wants to be challenged, like that's what I want. I want someone who's hungry to be challenged. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to test this yet, but there might be a scenario here where she thinks she wants to be challenged, but she doesn't. It's like that classic thing when you speak to 100K plus candidates and they always go, "Why are you looking?" "I want a new challenge." And how often do you place someone in a company that doesn't have buy-in from a CEO, or like, you know, there's controversy in the company, there's your challenge, and then they call you up, "Oh, I don't like it, it's too much of it, you know, it's too challenging." So I think, you know, I've gone one way, I'm heading the other way. The other way that we test it is that there was a winning formula at one point at Principal People, and we used to use, or we still do, we use personality profiling called McQuaig. And what we did was we personality profiled the whole business, and we had never done it before, but we all had the same shape on this McQuaig profile. And at one point, we actually veered away from that for a long period of time, from about sort of 2017 to about 2022. We actually looked for opposites to that, because the view was, if we keep just hiring people that are the same as us, are we actually going to grow and are we actually going to develop? And it's worked in terms of finding better resourcing partners and people that want to stay in that capacity. But where it hasn't worked so well is we still don't have really successful consultants that don't have that shape. And even people who have maybe, like Dom, who was a resourcing partner previously, he's left, he's come back, his personality profile now fits ours, so it's changed.
I suppose it does over time, doesn't it? Like life experiences.
Apparently it's like till you're 25, it will vary quite a lot. And then after 25, it should kind of mellow out a little bit. But interestingly, my personality profile has changed quite a lot, even in the time since I've had this new role. I'm more analytical, whereas I used to be the opposite to that previously. But that's like a taught trait. I'm not a naturally more organized or person, so I've gone to that way now. I've made myself do it. So yeah, I think I've learned, you know, you do change a lot over time. And I think that's the other point, you know, just because someone starts there doesn't mean they can change. So honestly, sorry, because I'm dancing around the question a little bit. Honestly, I don't necessarily have an answer for you yet. We are learning. We are, you know, still figuring it out for ourselves. We aren't experts yet in terms of what the winning formula is, but we are learning, we are developing, and we've. I don't think we've made mistakes. We've learnt a lot though over the last 2 years since me and Tom have been running the business, and yeah, I'm excited to see what we've got in store.
The other word that you mentioned that sort of my ears pricked up a little bit when you were describing why you think you were successful and what you did early on. You said about hard work. I worked hard.
Yeah.
I think hard work gets a bit of a bad rap at the moment. Like, what does that look like in your eyes?
It's very different to what I think it is now to what it was back then.
What is it now then? What does hard work look like in recruitment now? Because I hear this, like, work smart, not hard.
Yeah.
The reality is that only works if the people you're competing against aren't smart.
Once again, I'm going to be really honest. I'm not really giving you many direct answers here. I'm still not sure just yet. I'm still figuring it out. But I had a really interesting conversation with, to be honest with you, another recruitment trainer this week. And he said to me, I don't mean to sound like a dinosaur, but back when I was a recruiter, I used to pick up the phone, I'd ring the number, and if the person was sat there, they'd answer it. And that's how I got hold of them. But nowadays, that isn't the case. Because nowadays, when you call someone, your iPhone knows if it could be spam. Your iPhone it's probably saved the number. You've got LinkedIn, you've got emails, you've got text messages, you've got WhatsApp. There's so much noise out there. So actually, what he said it's so much harder than maybe what it was back in the day to now get hold of people. So back when I first started, it was... I remember at one point I had a KPI when I wasn't performing to the best of my ability. My BD to job on was 150 business development calls to one job on. And I remember there was a little bit of like, they were learning as well as leaders at the time. And I remember they're like, all right, it's 150. I was like, 150. And it was kind of like, yep, that's the number. And because I'd been there at that time, I think nowadays if you did that, someone would be so demotivated, they'd just leave. But we were given quite a lot of freedom to like, look, that's the number, but like, if you bill, like it doesn't, like just go and do what you can. And I think like they lowered it to like 100 or something. Like, that's still crazy number, but on average, the business was aimed at like 50 business development calls a week. And I think nowadays, business development calls are great, but it's all about balance. You don't want people just putting a number on the system for the sake of it. Like, what are you getting out of the conversation? And you just can't quantify it. And business development is a little bit like marketing, I think, which I've learned a lot about as well over the years, because we hired a marketing manager a few years ago. And I'm always like, I need to know return on investment. And he would say to me, it's like, the thing is, you can't always show return on investment on marketing. And I think business development potentially is the same. So your KPIs are so important, but they should be a tool. Just like the personality profile I spoke about earlier. We wouldn't hire and fire someone based upon a personality tool. And I think KPIs potentially are the same thing. It's about, are they hitting those targets, but are they also getting the results? And the result also shouldn't only just be the number that's on the board. There are other things that are important. Like we do Passovers for things like contract in our business. And one of our team at the moment, he's made an agreement of 10% he gets for every Passover he does. He's making $8,000 a quarter from doing that. That means he's bringing in £80,000 worth of business into our company a quarter for contract work. So like, we've got to quantify that. If he has a bad quarter, but he also helped bring £80,000 worth of contract business in, like, you've got to look at it all, I suppose, is the point. And I think going back to hard work, I think what I expect of people is that they try their best, right? Because at least if they try their best and they're not good at it, you can say, I just don't think you're good at it. Like if they are hitting the phones, they are sending out lots of emails, like if in general, they are kind of like in the top quarter of the business, and then plus they're naturally good at recruitment, they should end up being successful. We've had people over the years who have been the highest on the phone, doing the most BD calls, all of that sort of stuff, but they're nowhere near it. They're not pulling the business. They're not doing the numbers on, the financial numbers, and they're not contributing to the business like they should do. Maybe they're just not good at it, or maybe the training's not where it needs to be. I think there's lots of different things. So I suppose hard work, look, I don't want to kind of, a bit old school for me, but it's someone who comes in with time, is ready, set up. Most of our most of our high performers are probably coming into the office between 7:30 and sort of 7:45 every single morning, and most of them are probably they've got an hour lunch every day, but most of them are probably taking 30 minutes to an hour, which is fine. I don't think it's necessarily hard work. You need a break sometimes, and then they're normally working till about 6 o'clock. But just because you're working late doesn't mean you're working hard. I like to see a combination of it all. I like to see the KPIs looking good. I like to see the phone times looking good. I like to see the numbers looking good. I like to see the support as well, like especially if they're like team leaders or managers. I like to hear good conversations on the floor. I like to hear them helping other people. I like to hear about what they've been doing that day. One of the things that I've seen the best success at the moment, if anyone isn't doing this, is we had a team member who seems to have all the skills and all the talents, but in terms of financial performance and numbers, just wasn't really hitting the mark of where I felt that he should be. And we made one small change. Well, I think it's a small change. Some might think it's a big change. And I've gone to a daily morning meeting with him, where what he does is he tells me every single week what his plan is for the week. And he doesn't have to achieve all these points. It's just what he's putting pen to paper of what do you want to achieve. And then for the day, what does he want to achieve? And then the next morning, he tells me how did he achieve in line with those targets that he set. And also, most importantly, what else did he do? Because it's recruitment at the end of the day. Job comes in, client books interviews, there's other things that have happened. And then we make a fair judgment on was that good activity for the day. He's gone from being at the bottom of the call times, bottom of the KPIs, to being at the top of these things. And I'm always banging on. If anyone follows me on LinkedIn, they'll know I'm a big fan of like posting on LinkedIn. I think it's really, really important. I was told years ago by another trainer that being LinkedIn famous is like really, really important. So I've got full buy-in on it. This guy didn't have any buy-in to it at all. Hates doing it. I make him do it, and he hates doing it. And yesterday he said to me, he pulled a job, and it was the first one since I've been kind of doing this stuff with him. And I said, "Oh, where did that come?" He said, it was a conversation I had with him as a candidate. He's come back to me, "Oh, okay, great news." He said, I wasn't going to tell you because I was a bit embarrassed. Like, I knew that you'd love it, but he actually originally reached out to me off the back of a video that I posted on LinkedIn. And for me, going back to that point earlier about like what makes you feel good at work, that is as good as doing a deal in my mind, because I know at that point I've done a deal in my mind because I've just got buy-in from somebody about posting on LinkedIn and seeing the value of like doing it. And it makes me realize that sometimes you get that thing of like, is what I'm saying right? Am I actually, it works for me, but is it going to work for these guys? Is it going to work for them? And when I hear that, it's like doing a deal.
Yeah. Validation, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. Could
we just talk about the journey of Principal People?
Yeah.
So it's from the outside looking in, and I know Simon. I've met Simon in the past, but the business has obviously gone through a bit of a change, and that's resulted in you leading the business. Like, how's that come about, and how have you found it?
Yeah. So I'll give a summary. So 40 years ago next year, Principal People was founded, I believe, as a generalist recruitment agency, and I believe in like the late 90s, they identified a market within health and safety, basically. And at that point, they were a high street agency turned specialist. I believe that they found kind of the financial downturn in the late 2000s quite tough, and that was the point where Simon capitalized and he bought the business. I believe it was in about 2010. As I mentioned, at that point, he basically kind of rebuilt the business at that time, and we went through this growth period because Simon made a deal of a 5-year buyout. If anyone's been involved in a buyout, you understand the pressures, the stresses. You've got to keep your costs low, profits high, and it was a pressure cooker that we worked in a good way, by the way. I see it as a fantastic experience because we had really high standards as a business. We worked really, really hard. At the point where Simon bought the business as well, our competitor was probably leading at that point. And I think come mid 2010s, we'd got ourselves back up there as the number one health and safety agency in the UK, in my opinion, and we were hearing our name a lot more. And one thing we've always benefited from is that years ago they used to put an advert in the back of the IOSH magazine, which is the industry body of the sector. Oh yeah, I see your advert in the back of the IOSH magazine. We hadn't been in it for 10 years, but they still thought we were in it.
Yeah.
So our name always rang true, and the brand is just so important from that perspective. Anyway, Simon then sold. We were in such a good place come 2020, and we all know what happened at that point. We still, posted good profits in COVID year, but obviously it was tough, and we had to do what we had to do in that time. And then after that, like, the pressure cooker was kind of turned off a bit. And at that point, we were sold to a large Scandinavian group called the Euler Group. They had one other UK business, but it was based in Newcastle. And that once that pressure had kind of dissipated and like all this sales done, I think that there was big expectations for that group of people that got Principal People to that point. Everyone felt like they deserved something, and they did deserve something. I think everyone did. And long story short, there were changes within the business. I think people at that point, they'd achieved what they had set out to achieve, and they've gone on to do other things now. And long story short, 2 years ago, our CEO/owner, Eric, came over, and I'd set him up a meeting with my cousin, who's a rec to rec. And we're sat in this meeting, and my cousin's like giving me advice about finding a managing director. And Eric kind of out of the blue says, am I better off going external or hiring within? And at that point, it was kind of like, my cousin just either we're telepathic, or he did really think this. He said, well, of course, if you can hire within, that's always the best place to go. So at that point, we kind of put a proposal forward to Eric around myself and Tom kind of leading the business in a capacity of Tom as MD and me as a director as well. And that's why we're at this point now. So, yeah.
And how would you describe the journey so far?
Learning curve would be the best description, but loving it, like really, really, really enjoying it. I was ready for a new challenge. I was ready to kind of stop doing the normal recruitment job of just billing. I was really ready to kind of take on a new challenge, take on a new responsibility, learn and develop the part of my role which I had been doing, but it was only probably doing about 20 to 25% of my capacity. I think, anyone knows being a billing manager is the hardest job in recruitment. I still believe that to this day. Like, spinning that plate of your own billings, plus you're getting your team, it is so difficult. So I was really ready to kind of dive headfirst into like really focusing on the people side of things. And I've definitely, like I've said it loads of times, like made mistakes and learned from those mistakes. And I've definitely feel like I've changed as a person as well over the last couple of years. I mentioned earlier, I say reading books, that would be a lie because I don't read books, but I listen to audiobooks, and they hit differently. Like when I used to go to events, I just kind of think they're a bit boring. I'm there for a different reason. And now I'm sat there at an event. I went to an industry event the other day, and there was some leadership speakers there, and I just was writing copious notes down of things that I could learn myself and that I could put into our business, even though it was health and safety related. There was so much great stuff coming from that. So I think for me as well, they say the average male hits maturity at 27, I read recently. Maybe for me it was 32, I don't know. But I that's what I mean by that maturity piece again. It's like just realizing actually, like, I want to be better, I want to get there. So I think, yeah, that probably summarizes that pretty well.
Cool. Okay. Final question, and I ask this to everyone on here. What do you think the next 12 months hold for the recruitment industry?
I went to health and safety. I went to a recruitment expo this year with team, and there was a real consistency around people saying how tough it's been this year, how tough it was last year, and I also heard I was listening to one of your podcasts this week that we were speaking about earlier, and I heard him say about how there's a lot of like people kind of saying, "Oh, recruitment, I'm doing really, really well this year," but being really, really honest and frank with you, our view of it, given that we've done it since 2014 in the same business, in the same industry, was that a lot of people's experience of recruitment, or most recent memory of recruitment, is like 2022, maybe 2023, when there was this boom. And so everyone thinks that that's what the normal, like what normal, it's not normal. You know, actually last year, this year, that's what it was like for us back in 2018, 2017. And we were really successful at that point. The big difference is costs have obviously gone up at that point, or at this point. So actually for us, what does recruitment have to hold? I think I did a bit of research on this, on like what success is looking like at the moment in recruitment, and we're a specialist agency, so I've always felt like we're in an advantageous position. And I think most people consider themselves specialist agency, just in different capacities. Like if you work in life science or you work in pharma, you consider yourself a specialist. Our specialism is a little bit different, because we, like 80% of our roles are really specific. We recruit like health and safety, environment, or quality advisors, managers, heads of, and directors. So it's really specific role type. And I think that being specialists, being specific, you will be successful, because businesses see the value in working with a specialist. And if your specialism is something that's quite unique within a business, you've got a much better chance of HR or internal recruitment using you, because they find it difficult to recruit for those types of roles. So they see the value. When you tell them it saves them time, it saves them money, you can really genuinely quantify that. Like, when did you last recruit a health and safety role? Well, I never have. Okay, well, you know, we do it day in, day out. We can do it within this time period. And because most people in internal recruitment, if you ever speak to an internal recruiter, I always remember speaking to someone for a big FTSE 100 business once, and she was telling me she was recruiting 80 positions. This was pre-2020, 80 positions at once. How can any person recruit 80 positions to a good standard, or to any standard at all? At that time, I had a team of 5 people, and I told her the max we could have at any one time was 25 open vacancies. So how one person could do 80, I just didn't
It's about
understand.
20 minutes per vacancy over the week, isn't it?
I mean, at that point, you're you know, with all due respect, that's administration. Like that is you, and it's not their fault. They're under-resourced, clearly. But if you can show the value of then partnering with a specialist agency, I think it really holds weight. And our best client at the moment within infrastructure, that's why they are our best client, because they recruit for lots and lots and lots of roles, and their recruiters are good at recruiting the roles that they recruit often. But health and safety or environment or quality is a tiny, tiny, tiny part of that business. So they don't have to recruit it all that often. For us, it's pretty, you know, it's a good repeat client, but for them, it's just such a small part of their business. Actually, it's much better that they invest all their time doing these roles where they're recruiting 5 of the same job in the same location, rather than this one specialist role. So I think, to answer your question, I think the people that will do best are the people that sell themselves as the specialists and set themselves apart within the industry. And my final point is that I don't do that much business development anymore, but I still jump on some calls, and I still got relationships with people, and the phone still rings sometimes, and I pick it up and I have an opportunity to sell. And one of the things that I've had feedback on, not direct feedback, but I can hear it I can hear the client seeing value in it, is describing our process in its entirety, almost like an elevated pitch. Because what I've noticed is no one else is doing it. Yeah. So when I'm head to head with someone now, like, oh yeah, we've spoken to one other agency or something like that, I know that the other agency isn't doing it. And that seems to be the reason why we're winning the business. Because I've sold it in a way that I've been really clear on what we do, and it's confidence, right? When you buy anything, you want to feel confident in, if it's a service, you want to feel confident that's the right person. When I first met you, Jamie, I had a conversation with you, right? That's the first thing you do, is you've got to sell your service, and you've got to identify what my need is, and then how are you best going to match it? Now, in recruitment, it's actually pretty simple. Everyone's need is they want you to fill the job more often than not. So if you can explain what you're going to do, and you don't have to say, oh, I'm going to make sure that this person stays by doing this. What you do is we have like steps. So we interview candidates. Then we do something really unique that I don't know if anyone else does it, but we actually send the candidates away because we work exclusively. We send the candidates away to go and like review the job. We send them a job pack, and then we ask them the really, really specific question to go and speak to husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, whoever it is in their family that makes that decision. And then we speak to them the next day. And it's a really unique selling point that clients love, because one of the biggest gripes from hiring managers is people apply for jobs. You then ask to interview them. They don't turn up, and they don't ever reply. But we get them to jump through these hoops to get them to do it. So I explain that. And then we talk about interview preparation with them. Then we talk to them about how we manage the offer process and all these things that most recruitment businesses are doing, but they just don't tell their clients that they're doing, of like why they're better.
No, instead they go, yeah, leave it with me. I'll send you some CVs, right?
Correct.
And it's the framing. I love that. So just to summarize that last part, you think next 12 months, the people that win are those that are specialists and those that like frame their service and map their process with the client.
That's what I think. But I think, I don't have a crystal ball, but as far as we can see, it's looking positive. I had a really good call as well with someone in infrastructure recently, and there's a big upgrade project that's about to happen. And it's billions. It's billions and billions and billions. And I was speaking to this client, and she's working for one of the top 5 construction businesses in the UK. And she was saying like they want to give them so much work, but there's just not the workforce to be able to deliver on it. And it excites me because a long time, 5 or 6 years ago, telecoms was that last boom of like right, we need to upgrade, we're behind, quick, do it. And we were really successful off the back of that. And so I think this is the next opportunity that's coming. So for us, we work in all sectors across health and safety. And I think that's one of the benefits of it being health and safety, environment and quality. It's pandemic proof because you still need it. And so we work in manufacturing, we work in all these sectors. So if you can diversify across different sectors, but also recruit the same role across all those sectors, then if you have, if all of a sudden public funding gets cut, you can pivot into another direction. So that's what I mean by that sort of specialist piece.
George, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you.
You mentioned earlier, like you're hiring, you're growing your team, right? If anyone's listening to this and thinking, I want to work for this guy, how should they get in touch with you?
Yeah, drop me a message on LinkedIn would be great. We're recruiting for contract consultants. We're recruiting for permanent consultants, and we're recruiting for apprentices at the moment. We are looking to grow the team by about 8 people over the next 12 to 18 months. So anybody that's interested, and regardless of, like, being really honest, like we won't turn anyone down, even if you're a director and you wanted to have a conversation with us. Like, I'm open to having a conversation. If it's your first time working in recruitment and you want to have a conversation, drop me a message, because I don't want to turn any opportunity down to potentially hire someone that's really, really good. So yeah, just reach out basically.
Brilliant. George, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, mate.
No, thank you very much.